is Anna's mysterious new friend that she always keeps talking to? Is he just an imagination or something much more terrified? Lisa grabbed the children and ran out of the house, leaving everything behind. Hey folks, I warn you, tonight's story is not for the faint of heart. This isn't just any ordinary haunted house story. It's a narrative that has made its rounds in horror circles, inspiring movies, books, and even fueling local legends. Tonight, we're taking a journey into the haunting tale of the house on Oak Ridge Road, a place so cursed that it left a legacy of fear and destruction in its wake. It's 1974, New York suburbs. Oak Ridge Road was just a quiet, tree-lined street in an unremarkable town. Families there knew each other, kids played in the yards, neighbors exchanged polite smiles over fences. But on this otherwise ordinary street stood an unassuming two-story house, with a past darker than anyone could fathom, and it would become the focal point of a terror that would claim multiple families and torment those who even dared to set foot inside. The Moore family was like any other. Samuel Moore, his wife Christine, and their 5 children were well loved by neighbors. Samuel was a hardworking man with a knack for fixing things, while Christine was known for her kindness and frequent community volunteer work. Their home was the kind that radiated warmth, a safe haven where love seemed to flourish. But even the warmest homes can hide the coldest secrets. That November of 1974, the town was rocked by a tragedy so horrific that people couldn't speak of it for years. In one night, the entire Moore family was wiped out in a massacre too disturbing to comprehend. And the person behind the murders? Their own eldest son, Michael. But was Michael really behind this, or was there something else? Michael, a 16-year-old with a reputation as a quiet but polite young man, shocked everyone with his confession. He claimed he was compelled by something, voices in the night that pushed him to commit an unspeakable act. In his eerie, chilling testimony, Michael described hearing whispers that started out faint but grew louder each night, filling his mind with visions of violence. He was certain these voices were real, even if no one else could hear them. They told him it was his duty to set his family free. When his parents and siblings lay dead, Michael sat among them, sobbing in a strange mixture of relief and horror. Michael's defense was that he was under some kind of spell or possession. Despite his insistence, no one believed him. The court labeled him mentally ill, sentencing him to life in prison. To this day, he maintains that it wasn't just him in that house that night. There was something else, something far darker than anyone could imagine. People tried to move on, but Oak Ridge Road would never be the same. The Moore house was left empty, shunned by everyone in town. It became a story, a place to avoid, a haunting landmark. Little did anyone know that the nightmare was only beginning. Almost a year later, in December of 1975, the Parks family came along. Mark and Lisa Parks, along with their 3 children, were thrilled when they stumbled upon the house for sale at such a low price. It was spacious, affordable, and had a yard big enough for their kids to play in. Mark was a practical man, and he shrugged off the dark stories surrounding the property. Lisa, though hesitant, let her husband's pragmatism convince her. They were new to town and didn't hear the whispers that filled the neighborhood. But they would soon find out they had made the biggest mistake of their entire life. Once they had settled, the couple began hearing disturbing stories about the house's past. A neighbor finally told them everything one chilly evening, speaking in a hushed tone, but the Parks dismissed it, attributing the warnings to superstitions. After all, they didn't believe in ghosts or curses. The house was perfect for their growing family, or so they thought. From the very first night, things began to go wrong. It started subtly, with an intense, unsettling chill that filled the rooms. At first, they chalked it up to the winter air, despite the fact that every other room in the house was warm. But this chill was different. It clung to them, sank into their bones, and refused to fade, no matter how high they turned the heat. Then came the smell. It was faint at first, but quickly grew stronger, a foul, rotten odor that seemed to have no origin. Lisa scrubbed the house from top to bottom, spraying air fresheners, but nothing worked. The stench would disappear for hours, only to come back with a vengeance. It permeated the air in the children's rooms, especially affecting their youngest daughter, Anna. But was the air only the problem in this house, or was the whole house full of dreadful mystery? Anna's friend Anna, just 5 years old, began speaking of a new friend shortly after the family moved in. At first, her parents were amused, assuming it was a coping mechanism for the change. But soon it became clear that Anna's friend was not imaginary. Anna insisted her friend's name was Eddie and talked about him with a familiarity that was disturbing. At dinner one night, she started sharing strange stories, saying that Eddie told her things about the house. "Eddie says he used to live here," Anna would say, her eyes wide with an innocence that only made her words creepier. Lisa laughed it off, but a cold shiver ran down her spine when Anna casually mentioned, "Eddie said his family didn't leave, they were taken away." Mark was more skeptical, but Lisa noticed the tension in his face as Anna continued. Soon, Anna began drawing disturbing pictures, shadowy figures standing in doorways, a man with hollow eyes watching over her bed, a little boy crying in a dark corner. When asked, Anna said, "Eddie showed me." And then there was Max, their 10-year-old son. He had always been a heavy sleeper, but one night he woke up needing to use the bathroom. Walking through the darkened hallway, he froze. A figure stood at the end of the corridor, a man dressed in clothes from another era, staring at him with piercing eyes. Max closed his eyes, heart pounding, and when he opened them, the figure was gone. The strange occurrences soon became impossible to ignore. The Parks family began hearing footsteps echoing through the house at odd hours, like someone walking just a few feet behind them, always stopping when they turned around. Lights would flicker on and off, objects moved on their own, and doors would creak open and slam shut without any wind or disturbance. One night, as Mark lay in bed, he heard a soft murmuring coming from the walls. At first, he thought it was a trick of the wind, but the murmuring grew louder, becoming distinct whispers. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was angry, filled with a bitterness that chilled him to the bone. Lisa, meanwhile, was plagued by a sense of being watched. She'd feel an icy hand brush her shoulder when no one was around, hear her name called from empty rooms, and more than once caught glimpses of a shadowy figure out of the corner of her eye. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the house itself was alive and breathing around them. The sleep disturbances soon turned into full-fledged nightmares. Mark would wake in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, his heart racing as he recalled vivid dreams of himself trapped in the basement, clawing at the walls as a dark force tried to pull him deeper and deeper. Lisa, too, began having similar dreams. In hers, she'd find herself standing in the children's room, staring down at her own body as a shadowy figure crept up behind her. The most unsettling dream, though, was one Lisa experienced repeatedly. In it, she was in the kitchen, preparing a meal, when she felt a presence behind her. She would turn around to see a woman standing there, pale and gaunt, her face twisted in despair. The woman would reach out to her, whispering something Lisa could never quite understand, her voice like a faint echo that reverberated through Lisa's mind even after she woke. The children, too, started waking up screaming. Max spoke of shadowy hands reaching for him in his sleep, while Anna cried, saying that Eddie was angry and that he wanted them to leave. The house felt increasingly oppressive, as if whatever force resided within it was feeding on their fear. It all came to a head on a stormy winter night. Mark had been working late, and Lisa was alone with the children. As she tucked them into bed, she heard a faint scratching sound coming from the walls. At first, she thought it was just the wind, but the scratching grew louder, echoing through the house like nails scraping against wood. Just then, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. Lisa ran to investigate, only to find the living room furniture overturned, books scattered, and pictures shattered on the floor. What happened next would drive them away forever. Little pause after this. The temperature plummeted, her breath fogging the air as she frantically looked around. And then she saw it, a figure standing in the corner, watching her with empty, hollow eyes. In that moment, Lisa felt an overwhelming wave of terror, a primal fear that told her she was in the presence of something ancient and malevolent. She grabbed the children and ran out of the house, leaving everything behind. When Mark arrived home, he found his family huddled in the car, shivering and terrified. They drove away that night and never looked back. Though they ran away, was the terror really over? Or was it just the beginning? As Lisa and Mark sped away with their children that night, they left behind more than a home. They left a mystery unsolved, a story half told, and a terror waiting to latch on to its next victim. In the days after, strange things began happening to the family, even in their new home. Anna, who had been so attached to her friend Eddie, grew distant, refusing to sleep alone, often waking up crying in the night. When asked what was wrong, she'd only whisper, "He's still here." One night, Lisa woke to a faint noise. It was the same soft scratching she'd heard on the walls back at Oak Ridge Road. Only now it was coming from inside their bedroom closet. With a lump in her throat, she opened the door to find nothing but her clothes swaying slightly, as if something had just moved through them. She closed it quickly, her heart racing. The next morning, she found a familiar scent wafting through the air, a faint, rotten smell she hadn't encountered since they left the Oak Ridge house. The family soon learned they weren't the only ones who felt the house's curse followed them. A few months after their escape, they heard that someone new had moved into the old house on Oak Ridge Road, a young couple expecting their first child. Lisa felt a chill settle in her chest as she realized they hadn't warned them about the house's history. A few nights later, Mark received a call from an unknown number. On the other end, a faint childlike voice whispered, "Daddy?" Thinking it was Anna playing a prank, he laughed it off until he saw her sitting in front of him, wide-eyed and clutching her doll. Months passed, and although the Parks tried to forget, the events clung to them like shadows. One evening, Lisa scrolled through social media and came across a video that stopped her cold. It was an old VHS recording, grainy and unsettling. It showed a family celebrating a birthday in a familiar-looking living room, the same living room from the Oak Ridge house. And there in the background was a young boy who looked uncannily like the sketches Anna had drawn of her friend Eddie. A chill ran through Lisa as she watched the boy turn to the camera, his gaze oddly piercing, almost as if he could see her through the screen. The video cut off suddenly, but the image of his hollow, haunting eyes was burned into her memory. Desperate for closure, Lisa decided to visit Oak Ridge Road one last time, hoping to find some clue about what had happened to the young couple who had moved in. When she arrived, she found the house dark and seemingly abandoned. A single note taped to the front door read, "They're with me now." Lisa backed away slowly, her mind racing, her heart pounding. She could feel eyes on her, cold, empty eyes watching her every move. As she reached her car, she glanced at the rearview mirror and saw a faint, shadowy figure sitting in the back seat. She blinked and it was gone, but the chill in the air remained. After that night, Lisa and Mark swore never to speak of Oak Ridge Road again, but sometimes in the dead of night, Lisa would awaken to hear faint whispers, see shadows flicker in the corners of her room, and catch that familiar rotten scent lingering in the air. The story of Oak Ridge Road became a local legend. Some say the house still stands, abandoned and waiting for its next visitor. Others claim that if you go there on a dark night and listen closely, you can hear the voices of the Moore family and the Parks family calling from within its walls, forever trapped. To this day, no one knows who or what Eddie really was. Some believe he was a spirit, a lost soul from another time. Others say he was something much darker, feeding on fear and binding itself to anyone who dared to enter the house. But one thing is certain, whatever lurks in that house has never truly left. And it's still waiting for someone to come back